Welcome all to my hub. And as you know, we are doing Python on the job. And we've already seen some fundamental things like the variables and using the lists. So today we are going to learn some more fundamentals. Before I get started, those who have not downloaded the zip file given in the link in the description, please do so because it contains the assignments which you will be doing. So the link is in the description. Please download the zip file, or those who know how to operate Git, I'll do a tutorial on that someday. So use the Git clone or Git pull if you have not got the latest code. Also, I would want to thank Ravi and Richa. You guys are giving good feedback, and I really am happy to see that. Yes, I do try to make this very simplified so that everyone understands it, and keep going with your feedback so that we can improve this more. After all, I want to make this a community participated tutorial so that we all can together make this a wonderful thing. So as you can see on the screen today, we are going to talk about how we can branch out our code and do some decision making. Like we write the code from top to bottom, and the code is also executed from the first line till the last line. But sometimes you need to have two alternative routes, and if a certain situation happens or if a certain condition is true or false, you want to do it in a very different way, and you want to do some other stuff, you want to execute some other instructions, or you wish to do some other task depending on a certain condition. So I'm saying this for those who are new to programming. Of course, those who know programming know I'm talking about the if condition and the if else condition, and Python also of course has it. The fundamental difference is that in Python you don't have those braces which you use in C, C++, Java. Python uses, well, indentation. But before we go into that, let me tell you why it is done that way. We all might be used to writing long modules of code. Many of you do it. I know that. Even I have done it. So how often do you find that the conditions and the loops, and then there are conditions inside the loops, and there are loops inside the conditions, and then you have functions inside which there are multiple blocks of statements? How often do we get confused and we find trouble to match which part goes in what, right? You all must have had that experience. So for that, what do? We indent the code like a paragraph style. So the developers of Python language were very smart. They said, hey, if that is the case, if that's what makes the code readable, then why not make this indentation itself as a rule and do away with the braces? And that's why we get very clean syntax in Python. So one look at the code, and especially if you're using a good integrated development environment like Emacs or Eclipse, which does code coloring and stuff like that, or VS Studio. I guess VS Studio might be good, however I don't know it. One look at the code and looking at the indentation actually gives you the idea of how things really are and what lies where. So block of statements in Python are done through indentation, and that is the standard rule for everything we will do from now on. When there's a block of statement, we will be using indentation. So the syntax is very simple. You write if, then you put the condition, put a colon after the condition, and then start indenting the code which is going to be in that if condition. Something which is after that, which is not in the if condition, you stop the indentation. You go back to the position where the if statement starts. So, and then there is else. Of course, we are going to see all that. So from today, we are not going to use the Python prompt. We will be actually using the code written in py files, and you already have your assignments. You can try it out yourself. So you can pause the video and try it out yourself. So I'm going to open the first assignment, in which the first exercise in which we will see how the if statement actually works. So let me go to, I have a folder called Git where all my code resides. So if you have unzipped the file, you will get this folder, Python, and in that you will be opening the folder called assignments condition. So I'll open the first file. Now, one more bonus which goes along the way, there's no need for separate tutorial or some separate topic for it. When you want to write comments in the code, well, comments are those lines which the compiler or the interpreter will not consider as the part of the code. It's not the part of executable. It doesn't consider it to be an executable code. It is just left there. So it's like to explain what the code does, and that is called a comment. So a single line comment in Python is started by a hash, as you can see here. Now we are also going to see one operator. Of course, you know the plus, minus, then there's a divide by operator which is slash, and multiplication and stuff like that. So I'm not going into details because after all we are on the job. We don't want to get into absolute basics, and those absolute basics are already there on a lot of sites and tutorials point, or a lot of YouTube videos, or even the Python official documentation. Modulus operator, as you know, if you use it, you can check whether there is a remainder. What is the remainder of a certain division? So let's see what we are doing here. So we have put number as 6. There's a variable called num. We are assigned the value 6. The percent operator is the modulus. So what it says is, if I divide num by 2 and I check for the modulus, if there's a remainder, if the remainder is going to be 0, which obviously means that the number is even. So if there is 6 and we do a 6% 2, the remainder is going to be 0, because when you divide 6 by 2, the remainder is always going to be 0. It's not an odd number. So this is the way you write a if condition. So we did if num modulus of, that is percentage 2, equal to 0. Now when you compare two values, you use double equal to, and when you assign a value, you use single equal to. So here we have given the condition that when I do a modulus dividing 6 by 2, if the remainder is 0, which in case it will be, then colon, which means I have done with saying what my condition is. Now after saying what my condition is, I say what is to be executed. So print it's the even number. So let's try and execute this code. I'll open the terminal. Let me go to my folder. I'll go to workspace, git Python, and assignments underscore condition. That is the folder which we have to be in. You will also get it in your Python folder. And the way to execute a Python file, by the way, if you have seen the .py extension, that is the convention, that is the standard for writing Python scripts. So I'll say Python 3 exercise underscore 1.py. So it says number is even. Why? Because the condition evaluated to true. So now the question is, in this case, if the number was even, it would say, what if the number is odd? I mean, it's like this. So now here the same code is there. The only modification is it will see if the number is even. The previous condition where the modulus gives 0 remainder. If it does not give 0, if there's anything else than 0, which will come as else part, as you will see here. So there's if, wherein we see if the remainder is 0, which means it's a even number. So you indent the code by 4 spaces. This is generally a standard. One tab is 4 spaces. And then again come back. Don't indent. The else is going to be in the same line of if. So else, again you indent and say that the number is odd. So as you can see that the first block of if has an indented line, then there is else, again there is indentation. So where you think brace, you should think indentation. And as I said before, that this is done for better readability. So let's execute this up arrow, and I'll replace 1 by 2. It says number is even. All right. Let me change it to 5 and save it. Now of course you know that there will be a remainder. It will be 1. So it will not, the code will not jump to this line because it will evaluate to false. It's not equal to 0. It is not equal to 0, so it will go in the else clause. So let's As you see, the result is changed now. The number is odd. So the point is, you give your condition, then give a colon, then indent the block, one line or more than one line, and then if you want to write an else, again you go back, write else, again you indent the code again in that else. That is the way it works. Now we talked about if this condition, else that condition. But friends, you know that there are situations wherein there would be multiple conditions in which you want to evaluate a certain thing. And I have used an ideal example here. Let's say that you want to check the grade of a certain student when you give the marks. For example, you know the standards are like 75 and above is distinction, and 60 and above is first class, and 50 and above is second class, and stuff like that, right? So these are multiple conditions. There is not a question of either this or that. It's not just two conditions. There are multiple conditions. In such a situation, Python has the clause of elif. So one thing to remember in this is the last condition after which there are no more conditions will be an else, not an elif. So let's see what we have done here. So here you'll see multi-line comments. Actually, I have explained the entire code here. You start a multi-line comment with 3 quotes and end it with 3 quotes. This is multi-line comment. So just to give a passing reference of what comments are. Now we have used the input function here, but we have put the input function inside another function, a casting function of int. The reason being, when you use an input function, and we have done it in our first assignment, the return value is string. So input will give a prompt, and when you enter something in that prompt, the value which is passed on to the variable to the left side of the input is a string. But now we know we want to do some calculations based on integer values. So we have casted the data type from string to integer. And that is the reason why, friends, I said something about Python, that while it's really great that Python assigns its own data type, but it's very necessary that we cast it whenever necessary. This time we need an integer, and so we should be very sure that we see to it that it is coming out as an integer, hence converting it explicitly to int. Now of course here are the if conditions. So if grade is greater than or equal to 75, what do you say? You say you got distinction, and once an evaluation happens, we will be assigning the grade value of 0, so that you see, if grade is greater than or equal to 75, it will be also greater than or equal to 60. So I remember in my class I had done this as a mischief. I was in 9th standard, and then our class teacher came and started to ask, well, how many of you got above 75 distinction? So you raise your hands. So I raised my hand, and then okay, she said, how many of you got above 60%? Raise your hand. So out of mischief, I had again raised my hand, and I said, of course I've got above 60 as well. So just to give you a trivia fun. So we are assigning it to 0 so that the next evaluation doesn't happen and it doesn't clash. Otherwise it would have 75 would have passed through all the conditions. So that's why I have assigned it to 0. There are other ways of doing it as well. You can try it out, and I think I'll give you a hint of how to do it later on. So then there is an elif again for the first class, and you see now there are two lines of indentation in every block of condition. Elif, and then there is elif, and there's an elif, but the last condition is if nothing else, then the last condition is you fail. So if you have not even got 35, then of course you have to fail, right? So the last condition in your multi-branching code will always be an else clause. So if you have 4 conditions, your first condition will be if, second will be elif, third will be elif, and fourth will be else. So let's execute this code and see what happens. Let's change it to 3. I'll say 80. That was the time when I actually played the mischief when I was in 9th standard. I had got 80% that time. So let's try 45. You just passed. Good, I did not get a KT after all. So that's how the conditions, multi-conditions work. So you have an if, then elif, and the last one is else. Again, remember the indentation. And I again urge you all to pause and practice yourself. Now let's talk about another operator, because since now we are at it, you might wonder, hey, if there's one condition, fine. What if I want to evaluate a certain thing and do a certain thing only if two things are true? Even if one of those is false, I don't want to do a certain thing. So the way to do is to use an AND operator. And in other languages you use ampersand, but as I told you that Python is more like English, so you just use an AND AND. Here's the code, you can see for yourself. So I have said that, you know, if you want to take computer science, there are certain conditions you have to, both criteria have to be met. I'll show you the if condition. See this? If subject is math and the age is greater than equal to 18, only then you are eligible. So if you can see again, subject is just normal input because we want a string, and age is int because we want to calculate it as a number. So let's try and execute this code for us. Okay, I'll say empty. Age is 17. Why? Because if you see the condition here, the subject was empty, all right, that evaluated to true, but then the age did not evaluate to true, so the condition failed and it went into the else clause. So that is how you do an AND when you want to have both the conditions as true. Only if both the conditions are true, then such a thing should happen. Now another way of looking at it, consider another scenario that there are two conditions thrown at you and you want either or one condition to be true, either one condition true or the other condition true. So the word itself is or. In this situation, what happens is, even if one of the two conditions succeed, then your if will run, otherwise the code will jump to the else part. Now one thing very important in or, for that matter in any case, but especially it becomes important to know in or, the evaluation happens from left to right. So you decide which condition has to be given a priority. The one which is to be having a priority should be in the left. Why? Because it's common sense that in the case of or, if the first condition, that is the left condition, is true, the right condition is not even evaluated. So you can see the code. So we have loosened the criteria for our computer science. So either your subject has to be math or your age has to be above 18. So as you see, now I can decide let's try again. Why? Because the age condition came to be true. Let's try once again. You can actually just say empty and 18. So you can see these are multiple ways in which things work. So this is it for today, friends. I urge you to try this because we are going to write scripts, and understanding and getting comfortable with the indentation is extremely important. And before I check out, before I sign off, please don't forget to subscribe. Please subscribe to the channel because you will get a lot of updates. I'm also starting webinars on advanced topics. Of course, those will be the paid webinars where you'll also get certificates. But please subscribe to the channel. You will get a lot of exciting stuff coming your way. So till the next tutorial, this is Krishnakant Mane signing off from the hub. Goodbye and happy coding.